Hi there. My name is Bob, and you're tuned in on YouTube to the Bible through the Bible with Bob. Anyway, this is part 2 of Can I Trust the Bible? And we've already done part 1, and if you haven't gone to part 1, you might want to see that first. But those of you that have seen part 1, just keep on watching. November 22nd, 1963, I was going to Loma Linda University, and I had just finished a class there and studied physical therapy. And I came out of the class and I went into the hall, and there was all types of commotion going on, and there was crying and yelling, and so I finally got someone to tell me what had happened, and they told me the president has been shot. And of course we're talking about John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy was a beloved president. It was like the loss, because he eventually died, and it was like the loss of a loved one. People were in tears, school was out, it was a terrible thing. Now there was a woman named Jeane Dixon, and she had predicted the assassination of the president. So she became very famous almost instantaneously, and all the people wanted to have her tell them the future, and she even wrote a book that sold 4 million or something like that. And Jeane Dixon wrote an article for the Inquirer. As a matter of fact, she did this every year for a while. And so I took and bought the Inquirer, and I looked at the article, and there was 40 picks of things that would happen during that year. And I can't tell you exactly which year that was, but anyway, so I saved it for an entire year, and at the end of the year, I went through the picks to see how many Jeane Dixon had actually got right. 3. Out of 40 possible prophetic things that she did, only 3 of them actually came true. Is Jeane Dixon a prophet? Probably not. As a matter of fact, not probably, she is not a prophet, even though she did make that one accurate prediction. Today we're going to talk about people that are prophets, and what does this have to do with trusting the Bible? Well, let's see. Now, the most important man that ever lived, of course we talked about that last time, was Jesus Christ. Influenced the world like no other man that has ever lived. 1.7 billion Christians, remember we mentioned that last time, all state that they are followers of Jesus Christ. The man who only preached for 3.5 years, but he was so successful because he was and is God. And the world was turned upside down by Jesus in a very small period of time. Christianity was everywhere. Now, 600 years before he lived, there were predictions about this great man that would appear, this Messiah that would appear, and he would be born in Bethlehem. You say, hey, Bob, I want to see that. Where's that at? Well, let's see. I've got it in the Bible here. I marked the Bible, and you're not going to have time to keep up with me on all these texts. And so I would recommend just writing them down. And the problem is time constraint. I only have 15 minutes. I'm probably going to take less time than that. And during that period of time, I want to go through the Bible as far as I can. But you keep the note of these scriptures, and this one is in Micah. And this is an Old Testament prophet, Micah chapter 5, verse 2. And he says, "But you, Bethlehem, Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will rule over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times." Now, when King Herod heard about the Magi come, we're getting close to Christmas now, and when King Herod heard about the Magi, the 3 wise men that came, they stopped to see him and said, well, where's the Messiah? Where's the king at? We've come to pay homage to him. He wasn't really thrilled about it, but he kept on a happy face and told him, well, when you find the Messiah, you be sure and bring him back so I can worship him. Well, anyway, he called the Jewish priests, and he said to them, where is the Messiah supposed to be born at? Where at? And they all knew. They knew about this prophecy, the 600 BC prophecy. They said, well, according to the prophets, he will be born in Bethlehem. Now, Jesus was born in Bethlehem. And according to, you can go into the book of Luke, but here's one, Matthew chapter 2, verse 1, confirms, and we all know this, the little town of Bethlehem, the song and so on. We know about that. Now, another prophecy was put forth by Isaiah. Now, Isaiah was quite the prophet. He's considered like a major prophet. In Isaiah 7, verse 14, he says that the Messiah would be born from a virgin, and Jesus, of course, was born from a virgin. And we know that story, and Matthew 1, 18 through 23 confirms that. Now, there was an interesting prophecy by Hosea. Now, Hosea says, and well, I might as well get that one out. Now, I'm not going to be reading all of them to you. Some I'm just going to quote. You will have to look them up for yourself just to be sure of the accuracy of these quotes. Okay, according to Hosea 11, and let's see, that was verse 1. Hosea 11, verse 1. It said, when Israel was a child, I loved him and called him out of Egypt. I called my son. Now, Jesus is often referred to as Israel in the Old Testament. A lot of people don't know that. But Jesus, here's a prophecy saying that Jesus would be called out of Egypt. What is this? He's called out of Egypt? That doesn't make sense. He was born in Bethlehem. What's the deal? Well, remember what happened with Joseph? Can you remember how the angel said you have to take the child and go to Egypt because Herod is seeking to kill him? In the sad story that we know about where Herod killed all the children from 2 years old and under. It was a very sad time. Very evil man. So Jesus went ahead and his dad took him and mom. They took him to Egypt, and after Herod died, the angel in the dream told Joseph, take him now and take him and go to Nazareth. And so that he would live in Nazareth. And that was predicted also. Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem was predicted, Zechariah 9:9. We're not going to look that one up. And Mark 11:7 through 11 tells that. Now this next text tells about, in Psalms 41:9, it tells about Jesus being betrayed by a friend. And of course that comes through in John 13:18, 19. Again, that was Psalms 41:9. Jesus betrayed by a friend? Well, sure, we all know the story. And how Judas betrayed Jesus. You know, today a lot of people, if they betray somebody, they're called a Judas. Jesus was betrayed by one of his disciples. Now, there's more to that that's very interesting, and we're going to Zechariah 11:12 for that. In Zechariah chapter 11, verse 12, and the Lord said unto me, and this is the prophecy, throw it to the potter, the handsome price of which they priced me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them into the house of the Lord to the potter. 30 pieces of silver, where have we heard that before? This is the prediction that Jesus would be betrayed for 30 pieces of silver. What's this stuff about the potter? And we got to remember what Judas did when he betrayed Jesus, and he saw that Jesus was not going to use his spiritual powers, to free himself, that he was going to let the people go ahead and crucify him. When Judas saw that he couldn't live with that, and he came back to the temple, and he had the money that they had given him, the 30 pieces of silver, and he threw it on the temple floor, and he says, I betrayed innocent blood. You shouldn't, you take the money back. Let's, make something happen here. Change this process. And what did these terrible Pharisees say? Oh, it's nothing to us. Yeah, we're not going to make any changes here. And so Judas went ahead and hung himself. Now, the wording I used was my own wording. That it would be good for you to check that out yourself. And they took the money and they bought a potter's field, and where they buried strangers, because they said, "Oh, this is blood money. We can't keep this money." And it definitely was blood money, that's for sure. In Zechariah 11:13, we find out what happened. And then if you look into the book of Matthew, you'll find out towards the end of Matthew, you find out, sure enough, 30 pieces of silver. Jesus was betrayed for that amount. There's other prophecies that are interesting. Psalms 22 is very good. Psalms 22, 16 and 18. It says right here, dogs have surrounded me. A band of evil men has encircled me. They have pierced my hands and feet. Talking about the crucifixion here. Pierced his hands and feet. I can count my bones. People stare and gloat over me. They divide my garments among them, and they cast lots for my clothing. Did that happen? Why, sure it did. Now, when he says I can tell my bones, the two thieves, one on each side of him, their bones were broken to speed up the process so they would die before the Sabbath. Just very cruel. Crucifixion was not used during the time of the psalmist, during David's time. So when he talks about the piercing of the hands and feet, that referred to crucifixion, but that was not even a thing at that time. Again, getting back to the bones, Jesus' bones were intact. They went to break his bones, but he was already dead, so they did not. So that's what that meant. I can tell my bones. Now this last one is kind of interesting too. And let's take a check here at Isaiah 53. Now, I'm going to tell you it would do you well to read the entire chapter of Isaiah 53, because at least up to verse 10 or 11, because Isaiah 53 tells a lot about Jesus in the crucifixion. But it says he was assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death. Though he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth. Well, what's this about the rich? You know, it says he's assigned a grave with the wicked, but on the same time it says, and with the rich in his death. A rich man, Joseph of Arimathea, became a follower of Jesus, and he asked for the body of Jesus. And so Jesus' body was put into a rich man's grave. And so that's where that came about. It talks about in Hosea 6:2 that Jesus would be raised on the third day, and of course we know that that did happen. There are 12 prophecies right here. We've gone through a good share of them, and I think we've touched on all of them. If all of these prophecies were to come true, the odds would be 1 in 479 million if all of these prophecies came true. Well, the truth of the matter is there are 330 prophecies in the Bible that deal with the first coming of Jesus Christ. Now, some of them are pointed, some of them are not. But can you imagine so many prophecies by so many prophets telling the future about a man to come, a man that would come and change the entire world? That's all in the Bible, and it's from God. Only God could do that. There is no other book that is so loaded with prophecies that tells the future in such detail as the Bible. We're going to study this next week. We're going to study Daniel chapter 2, and that's a prophecy that will take us down 2,500 years into the future. If you don't believe the Bible after this, there's not a great deal that I can tell you, because there's so much that God gives us, and I use the word to hang your hat on, so many things he gives us that show that he is the God of the Bible. Until I see you next week, or whenever you turn on the video, that'll be interesting to see if I could actually see you, because actually I can't. But until you turn in again, it is my prayer that God will bless you, and that God will take care of you and make sure that things go good for you, and that he'll give you peace. Thank you for tuning in, and I appreciate that.